So where do we start here? I guess we're starting in the Roadmap Roundup, so this should be fun. So, the Roadmap Roundup. Happy Wednesday, everyone. I love how they start off these things. Basically, they explain every 2 weeks they put out a roadmap update for Star Citizen and Squadron 42. Though the Squadron 42 things are a bit lacking, it's just basically stuff that mostly is also in Star Citizen, and then chapters for Squadron. Anyway, notable changes this bi-weekly update for March 30th, 2022. The progress tracker. The following deliverable has been added to the progress tracker. Checkpoint/skip point tool. This is a Squadron 42 tech, and it says the creation of an editor tool as part of the subsumption visualizer which allows the creation of files defining setup for specific checkpoints, such as spawning entities, their position, and loadouts. This is being added to the Squadron 42 features team's schedule. Lots of words. So
I'm not even sure what to make of that one.
I don't even know why they put it here. It is the tech they need to make sure that it saves the state, direction, loadout of NPCs around the map, and then can reload them when you die.
Yeah, when you die, when save and load back in later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And skip to point. When, I guess that would be like if you skip a cutscene. It's great. I'm glad that stuff is getting done in Squadron. Why did this need to, you don't tell us that there's features coming into a patch like the missile tweaks or what are some of the other quanta being put on the roadmap, but you'll give us checkpoints?
Yeah. I mean, it's a necessary feature for a single player game.
It's just a bit out there, a bit nebulous, as you might say.
Naz, I think your mic is a bit loud. You're a bit loud on my end.
Okay, I'm sorry, everyone.
Or maybe you're sitting a little close. I don't know.
Probably both.
Yeah. Well, you also have a much better mic than I do.
Or much worse, depending. Anyway, to the release view. This week, we've added a minor addition to the release view interface. To benefit players who may be unaware of our patch release cadence, we've added a column for each quarter's release for the remainder of the year as previously communicated. We've added this card. We'll add this feature card to those columns as we get closer to their respective quarters. The following deliverable has passed its final review. For this reason, we've updated this card to committed and changed the color to the best color, blue, the hull A. The Scorpius will be later in 3.17x patch. You're clipping a bit tree. Let me see if I can fix this. Audio things. All right.
Is it audio clipping or just the video?
I imagine it's audio.
Okay.
So what yes.
So the interesting thing about the release view, so they added the quarter releases for the rest of the year. Predictably, they labeled them 3.19, 3.20. We are not going to know it's 4. Yeah, we're not going to know it's going to be what patch will be 4.0 until until then. They're not going to tell us ahead of time.
No, we won't know till after it releases. They said this 2016 CitizenCon. They said until we release the update, you won't know it's 4.0. And basically, they'll announce that server meshing will come in the patch before they call it 4.0. They just won't until it's retroactively call it 4.0, just for reasons. But interestingly, I didn't actually read that bit about the two new quarters. Why did they add the 2 new quarters?
Just based off what they said, but it was funny because a whole lot of people reacted to seeing those things labeled as 3.19 and 3.20 and lost their minds. And it's like, really? Did you really, see no 4.0, no pyro, no server meshing? And it's like, no, that's not what that means.
No. As I said, 3.18 is my tinfoil hat 4.0.
Yeah. But even if it isn't, until it releases, we're not going to know. They're not going to tell us. It's that big. It's that big, and that is CR's thing. Of keeping things behind the veil.
And that's more. It's only coming about because they don't want to call, let's say, 3.17 4.0 and then say what server meshing can't come in this next quarter, and then they're like, it's 4.0, but you don't get server meshing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that you want to call it 4.0, but you don't want to call it before you're sure. And with server meshing probably in the state that will come in when it comes in, broken as all get out, you don't want to have to delay something, then you'd be like patch behind, so it'd be 4.1 and it'd be weird. For those of you who don't know, they're gonna call it 4.0 because of how big a difference it will be between what we play now and what we play after server meshing. The difference between the gameplay is going to change so dramatically, they want to call it another whole version, not just 3 dot something.
So, it's the next quantum leap.
Sure, that's great. That's I mean, that's a pretty good apt description.
It was also entertaining for me when they mentioned we also wanted to confirm that the Scorpius is on track to release in a subsequent 3.17.x patch, and people lost their minds. And
that's it.
I can't fathom it because the sprint for the Gladius has been
Scorpius,
a late, the Scorpius has been a late 3.17 release indicator since it's been there. And I could have sworn, and I've been trying to find where it was said because I'm not the only one that remembers this, but they told us that the Scorpius would release at Invictus Launch Week 2022. And I'm almost positive. I know I know this was said somewhere. It wasn't a new thing, and people thinking that it was going to come right at the initial launch of 3.17. Yeah, it's on the progress tracker. It shows you it's going until the end of April. It's been like that for ages. You just didn't look at it.
I support the Scorpius being, even if it was done 3 months ago, waiting to release it till Invictus, and there's a good reason. I don't want another G12 thing where it's just like, this is the height of luxury in a rover. By the way, the military bought 5 million of them. Just like, what? Why? That's not a luxury. That's not a military vehicle. I don't care if you put rockets on it. It was because of their superior craftsmanship. Oh, get out. They didn't have something, so like, what do we have? We have a rover we can throw together. Do it.
They want the generals to be able to ride around in style.
No.
They need comfy seats with lumbar support.
No, I refuse to believe. I refuse to believe that that's going to show up in Squadron.
Oh no, I don't buy that either.
It's not even on the progress tracker.
Yeah,
but generals rode around something before the G12. I cannot. No. We look at the universe that we've built, or that Star Citizen or the CIG has built in front of us. What in the universe says that the military rides around in pompous vehicles?
Yeah, no,
the civilian luxury and the military have been very delicately separated. Like, they've purposely said, this is a military aesthetic, this is a luxury aesthetic.
Yeah.
Never do they touch.
And even for the manufacturers that cross over, you can see a visible difference between the ships that are military ships within those manufacturers and the ships that are not.
Yeah. Admiral Bishop is not riding around in a Phoenix. Polaris, yes. Bengal, yes. Phoenix, no.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Enough rippling for that one.
Well, and so the Roadmap Roundup was very limited this time around. We are all crossing our fingers for the next one. And we don't have a monthly report yet because
it comes out in 3 days.
It comes out on Wednesday. So we will definitely be diving into that monthly report. Yeah, 2 days.
Yeah.
Today's Monday. Yep. We'll definitely be diving into that monthly report, scouring it so that way we will be able to present that with the next episode.
Yep.
And then let's see. So it'll be next episode. We'll have the monthly report and a roadmap roundup. So maybe that'll be the big episode that we were hoping.
Yeah, that will be our first 3-hour episode.
Yeah, but we'll be Naz is working on updating our format so that way, not only do we have the long form format when we're live on Twitch, but also when it goes up to YouTube, there will be chapters so you can watch individual sections and get directly to what it is you're trying to hear about, as well as individual videos. Eventually, hopefully, we can make that work, so that way we can satisfy the algorithm, but also satisfy the viewers, getting the content out in a more digestible fashion.
Yeah, I have no idea why Tree let me put this on my own YouTube channel, because this show is just absolutely loving the algorithm, and all those views and crap are going to my channel.
I am doing this because it is for my mental health.
Oh, okay.
That's what this is.
Okay.
This is a mental health exercise, a distraction from
I'm
real
not a
life.
doctor. I can give no medical medical assistance.
So
the one thing we do have, though,
on.
the one thing we do have right before we move on, is that the downstream and upstream teams are more complete than they have ever been, because we've had some problems with this in the past where a lot of the teams weren't on there. So if you go look at the companion, over the past few weeks, I've actually helped a little bit, a very little bit, but mostly Jake, Acapella, he works at CIG, has been going back and figuring out which teams are there and which teams are not. So now we have a most, if not all, I'm pretty sure it's all of them this time, all the teams are now on the upstream downstream lists. So good. Now we can move on.
Hopefully, now if only people read that,
The people who care about this podcast read the list, okay?
Mm-hmm.
We talk to the people who read the progress tracker and read the companion thing. We're in good company.
We are. So this episode's Spectrum Pulse, and again, Spectrum Pulse is where we take questions that we find through our interactions with the community, whether it's on Spectrum itself, or Reddit, or in different Discord channels that we're in. We look for questions that people in the community are asking about aspects of Star Citizen, whether it's the development or ships, gameplay, that sort of thing, things that are sort of vexing and don't have easy answers. And so we take these questions and we do a deep dive into all the or not even a deep dive. We do detailed scans, through the vast nebulous information surrounding Star Citizen, in order to find the information that can help you find your own answers. And so with these and the scanner anomalies, we like to present the information that we find first in an objective way. So that way, you're not getting it through our personal filter. This is me and Naz just showing you, hey, this is what we found. The links are in the show notes. You can read it for yourself. We're going to paraphrase things, for time's sake, but help you get answer to the questions. We'll give you our spin at the end and what we think. But you can take it or leave it, but at least you have the as much the best information available. And again, if we go through these spectrum pulses and the scanner anomalies and we miss something, you have information that you think is relevant, please let us know. Reach out to us on Discord, or leave a comment on YouTube, and send that information our way. We will update the show notes after the fact, and we will also, in the following episode, give a verbal update and give you credit for finding that information and adding to our lexicon about these different topics.
Speaking of our Spectrum Pulse, and I'm sorry, Tree, you've done all of them so far. I have not helped one bit on any of the pulses, the Spectrum Pulses.
Like I said, this is my my mental health outlet. It lets me escape from real life work and do something that's a mental thought exercise. And so I was doing this anyway for fun, and now I get to do it with you and share it with other people in a more formal capacity. But so this episode, Spectrum Pulse, where I titled it "The Starfarer Identity Crisis," and it originated uh, Othmion, the actual originator of the question, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering your pronunciation of your name, um, is a frequenter of the or Astropub Discord, as well as he's active in the Inforunners Discord, which we are both in. And Othmion, is that
Althmion.
an M?
It's
Yeah,
Althmion.
he's in chat right now, so we appreciate him dropping by and hanging out. But if I remember correctly, this was a discussion that was had in one of the discords. Othmion, yes, I had it. Cool. Um, that he ended up making a Spectrum post about. Um, and obviously, Spectrum was not super helpful because it rarely is unless a dev weighs in. Um, but because it was a good question, and when we were talking about it, we're like, you know what, that is a bit nebulous. Let's do some some digging on it. And so I created, yeah, when is Spectrum ever actually helpful? It isn't, unless a dev actually comes in there and gives us the clarification that Othmion was asking for, versus community members just chiming in with what we already knew. Yeah. occasionally, occasionally you'll meet the right people, but
I've
it's
not
hard.
yet met the right people.
Yeah. I go on Spectrum to see dev
No,
posts.
wait,
That's
that's
it.
not true. I have a great conversation going with the guy who has written the unofficial Road to Server Meshing. Me and him chat.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you're talking about the that presentation thing. Yep,
Yeah.
he is fantastic. I do like it when other people in the community share the things that they're building, or that they've made, resources, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Othmion's question, um, that he posted on Spectrum. Starfarer can refine everything or not. ISC clarification. Can we get clarification into if the Starfarer can refine all materials or can it not? Is the Starfarer only a fuel refinery or a general purpose refinery but less efficient at it? We have two recent pieces of information that conflict. Um, so he put in links that have timestamps, um, with short quotes relating to those two pieces of information. The first, chronologically, was from Inside Star Citizen Sweet Gadget of mine in fall 2021. Dan Truffin said, "Starfarer to refine whatever the prospector and mole are harvesting right there on the spot." Whatever the prospector and mole are harvesting right there on the spot. It doesn't mention fuel. But then in Inside Star Citizen Expanse Glance Winter 2022, which was just like a couple weeks ago, or yeah, um, very recently, John Crew said the Starfarer was more specialized into purely doing fuel, in reference to refining, I believe. And so obviously that can leave a lack of clarity, about what the Starfarer is actually capable of. And that lack of clarity isn't helped by the fact that the Starfarer has been through a multitude of changes, um, since since the beginning, since 2013 when it was first a thing. Um, so B Blizzrad BLZrad just said, "Let me guess. Spectrum's helpful response was, they don't conflict, and you are stupid for asking." Yes, that is an excellent way to paraphrase it. If you want
Yes,
to,
I read through a couple of them. They're just basically, you don't know what you're talking about, or like that you can't transfer stuff. There's pipes all over the ship.
hmm
Look.
So the show notes are in the description, and the link to the Spectrum post is in there. So if you can give, when you get a chance, and if you're listening, please give Othmion's Spectrum post an upvote so we can get, maybe a dev to come in and clarify, because that would be really helpful. But so back in 2013, the Galactic Guide for MISC was written, and it mentioned the Starfarer before it was even in production. Back when it was just, essentially words. Um, and I'm going to read a quote. Because the way the Starfarer was come up with, MISC actually did like a big old research study over like a year and a half. It came out, ended up being like 15,000 pages long, basically telling them that, um, hey, we need an actual dedicated fuel truck, because prior to the development of the Starfarer, it was just a whole bunch of hodgepodge. Um, Options, converted this and that, essentially using modified ships to carry fuel as well as refuel other ships in flight. So it says the end result: a decision to focus development efforts on a dual role fueling craft capable of both collecting spaceborne fuel and refueling other spacecraft in flight. And then it just goes on to describe the Starfarer in how they carry massive internal fuel tanks that are welded directly to the ship's core. So they weren't originally going to be removable. They were going to be a hard um,
Part of the ship.
a hard yeah a hard part of the ship, part of the ship, part of the crew, uh, but a piece that wasn't removable. Um, and they were to allow for refueling other ships, but also to take on fuel by scooping within the atmosphere of gas giants and other, like nebula type things. Um, but the refinery mechanism was to be a upgrade. It wasn't part of the base chassis. So originally the Starfarer was meant to just be a fuel truck, but with the ability to scoop fuel, or what was going to be used as fuel from space gas. Um, there was also the plan to be able to remove the fuel tanks that were welded onto the chassis, and put on a cargo cargo mod for um, transporting bulk goods, but apparently that wasn't as popular. So there's a good block of time from when that verbiage came out, from when the Starfarer was first thought up and sold and all that, to when we actually first got to see the Starfarer. And they actually revealed the Starfarer on Around the Verse, which is one of the predecessors to the regular video shows that we get now, on a segment called Ship Shape. This is actually released in March. It was March 18th, 2016, before the Jump Point was released, that actually detailed the progress of the Starfarer from concept to production. And so in that Ship Shape, Florentin Billemont, he is the Star Citizen dev. I don't think he still works for CIG, but he is the one that made the Tonk of Nova Tonk famous, because he is a Frenchman. He has a heavy accent. I believe he's French. I don't think he's Quebec or French Canadian, but has a heavy accent, and so that's what he's famous for. But at 313 in that Ship Shape, he says 2 fuel refineries that will come standard. And so that is basically, when we, found out that, hey, not only the Starfarer isn't going to come with, the refineries aren't going to be an upgrade. It's going to come standard with the base Starfarer. And then later on, he mentions you can see the big difference between the fuel pods there and the fuel refinery, a bit bigger as well. And so if you ever looked at the Starfarer, walked around when it's landed, you'll notice that the fuel pods, the 3 pods on either side to the rear of the racks, are smaller, and basically have different greebling to them than the pods to the front, which are the actual refinery pods. Uh, After that, again in March 2016, I want to say it's just like a week or so later, um, there was the comlink transmission, massive hauling, the MISC Starfarer, that is basically like when we get new ships now. You have your, hey, no, Sorry, my dog was doing that butt scoot on the carpet
Ah,
thing.
no.
Don't do that. Um, anyway, so it's if you go look at it in the link, it's the sort of the advertisement thing the narrative lore team puts out along with marketing. When we get a new ship, when it goes up for for sale and all that. And so the very beginning it says designed to collect and refine quantum fuel in flight. And so we we had, let's see, in March 2016. I can't remember what patch we were. I didn't look, but this is way early days for the alpha. And I think we were just in the hangar. Yeah, we were just in the hangar.
Hmm.
But at this point, they had talked about quantum travel just a little bit, and how we were going to be traveling through the verse. And so this is the first mention I could find of the Starfarer collecting and refining quantum fuel versus, and we still didn't know what quantum fuel was going to be made of, how I was going to go about. But at this point, myself, this is when I assumed that, okay, if the Starfarer uses its scoops in order to scoop gas giants and nebula and stuff in order to fill its fuel tanks, I assumed that quantum fuel was going to come from, you know, some sort of gas or gas mixture. Um, from reading this and from what we had been told before. And another quote that I picked out from that page, and you'll want to go back and read this if you want to know more because it's pretty interesting. But it's basically just an advertisement thing. It's like a ship brochure. Almost. The Starfarer was initially designed as a tanker and includes equipment for collecting and refining spaceborne hydrogen. And so that's why this gets a little bit confusing because at the beginning, collect and refine quantum fuel, and we didn't know what quantum fuel was from, but now it says for collecting or refining spaceborne hydrogen. It's like, okay, is this a separate mechanic that it's capable of doing? Is this the same mechanic? Does it have a way of refining hydrogen to not only thruster fuel but also quantum fuel? We didn't know. We didn't have the answers at this point. And so the rest of that brochure type thing talks about how the crew go about their daily life on a Starfarer and how they do things. Um, but it with it talks about the I think it was the crew member who manages the fuel. With her cargo holds now a few tons lighter and her crew a few credits richer, the Clydesdale, the name of the Starfarer in the story, is ready to finish her contract and deliver her precious supply of fuel to the station's waiting storage tanks. And so, ostensibly, you'll be able to transport fuel, collect and refine, and then transport it to a station to keep the station supply up as well, not just refueling other ships. But continuing, specially built for the task, transferring the contents of the Starfarer's massive detachable fuel pods is a straightforward affair, as Quartermaster Dion ensures that the business at hand is conducted quickly and, more importantly, safely. And so, you know, ostensibly this process, they talked about it in a recent ISC. You can do damage to other ships by not, filling them up in a manner that is safe. But you can also do damage to your ship, the Starfarer, and potentially you could do damage to a space station that you are providing, delivering fuel to, for ships that are going to refuel there.
I just realized there's gonna have to be a fuel port somewhere on the space station.
Hmm.
Like we have the tech to do it, but it's just like you roll up on a giant space station. Where do I plug it in?
Yeah. Where do you plug it in? Do you land in a
Ugh.
hangar and then connect somehow? How's this going to work?
Oh man.
But eventually that's going to be a thing. Everybody's like,
Yeah.
a lot of people dismiss the utility of the Starfarer because they only think about it as refueling ships, and
We're
it's
gonna
like,
need a
no. How do you
bigger
think the
Starfarer.
fuel? Yeah. How do you think the fuel is going to get from you know, from station to station? How do you think the fuel is going to be taken from sources of hydrogen or whatever to the station?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is talk about using the hulls with attached containers for bulk transfer and stuff. but you're not going to use a hull for going out and
They will,
scooping gas from a gas giant or
yeah,
a gas pocket.
they
You
will
know,
probably use a hull series, probably hull C, D, or E, to get it to a station, but use Starfarers to actually deposit it into the station.
yeah,
Because
yeah. The
moving all those tanks, let's say a whole sea worth of tanks into a hangar, then doing it, why not just hook the hangar things up to a Starfarer, land those, drop those back out onto the hull C, and repeat?
mhm. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they do it because if you and again, one thing I like to do in this podcast is I like to highlight other content creators and their work. We talk about Infrarunners a lot and Astropub. I enjoy Ray's Guide's videos, and Ray's Guide did a great video on
Mm,
Lagrange points.
yes, he
And
did.
one of the Lagrange point stations that he talked about, I think, was one where, based off of where gases would collect, is where you would put a station that collects those gases to make fuel and make hydrogen fuel. And so I could see fleets of starfarers going about scooping this fuel, filling up their tanks, bring it back to these fuel stations where it's refined into, higher octane hydrogen fuel or thruster fuel, refined into, you deliver your quantanium fuel there maybe as well, who knows? But then larger bulk transfer ships like a hull would take the bulk of that fuel to other places, to the other stations. Um, but who knows how it's gonna work. But it's the Starfarer isn't just for refueling other ships. It's just that's what we're getting right now, or coming up with Alpha 317.
Yep.
Um, and moving on, so in the show notes it's linked. I uploaded the jump point. It was jump point 4-4, April 2016. It's called Reaching for the Stars, and it's the one where they detailed the development of the Starfarer through concept. And sometimes there's some good little tidbits in those jump points, especially when they're
Oh.
talking about ships and how they got developed and what is actually in them. Um, and one quote I picked out, and it's just sort of generic to do with everything else. The MISC Starfarer is the galaxy's standard fuel transporter. Standard fuel transporter. Not just standard refueler, standard fuel transporter. Starfarers are ubiquitous on both sides of the refueling process. Their massive tanks allow for both the collection of spaceborne fuel from gas giants and extrasolar sources and the transport of active fuel from refinery stations to the primary market. So, you know, the the Starfarer is going to be integral to the logistics involved within Star Citizen. Just like the miners are integral to the logistics in mining ore and bringing it back to refining stations in order to have it refined to make materials for everybody to make everything. Um, the Starfarer is that, but for fuel. Whether it's how much it's involved in the quantum fuel aspect of it, mm, we'll see. Um, you know, I I'll get to that part later. But the I uploaded the jump point to Google, so if you want to download the jump point, you can do that. It's also those pictures or images are available in a com link that is also in the show notes. And then the next post was also in April 2016. So we got a whole lot of information that came with the Starfarer in 2016 when it first made it into our hangar mode, the original alpha. Um, and so that com link was the shipyard fuel mechanics com link. Um, and it says refineries are the key. One quote I picked out said the refineries are the key to converting other gases into usable fuel. While fuel intakes do a passable conversion job, refineries take it to the next level. They can be found on a wide range of ships like the 100 series, Freelancer Dur, and on the high end, the Starfarer. So the Starfarer has a high end refinery for fuel.
According to this thing.
According to this thing, what differentiation there will be in game between the Starfarer's refinery and the one on the 100 series or the Freelancer Dur, we don't know. How is the fuel based refinery of the Starfarer going to compare to the Expanse, and other more mining based refineries? Again, we don't know. We're going through the information. We'll see what's available. But it's an interesting quote. Um, the next one that I picked out: as part of the refining gameplay, you can select what type of fuel to scoop and where it will end up, provided you have a ship with multiple fuel tanks, such as the Starfarer. You will need to monitor the situation as gas concentrations will vary by location and even within the same location. So I think this is really interesting because with the refineries and them talking about how the Starfarer is the high-end fuel refinery, I wouldn't be surprised if they, um, along with the refinery processes that we see when we're dropping off our mined materials in game right now, if there are multiple refinery processes for fuel in order to get different aspects coming from the fuel, depending on what the gas is
Yeah.
that you have available. Essentially like different levels of octane, for like we have for unleaded, but more granular, more complex. You could think of a number of different modifiers that you could get from different gases, and the level of that modifier would be modified by the level of the refinery. So the highest level refinery on a ship, being the Starfarer, could get you the highest grade octane of ammonia gas, um, uh, or what do they call it? Yeah, ionized ammonia gas converted into plasma. So maybe that would have a modifier towards thruster output or thruster efficiency or reduction in heat or something like that. And it would, the modifier would go from like 5, 10 to 20% based
Yeah.
off what refinery.
And
You
that's
know.
gonna bleed a lot into the racing scene. Like, there's already a really
Oh
good
yeah.
racing scene in the game now, but there's gonna be like actual like in lore
Hmm.
races being held in the game,
Yeah.
and
Think
those.
about what that would do for the Daymar Rally. Or the
Ooh,
ship races we don't have
yeah.
yet, whether it's a
Like
short sprint one or
there's there's like the Murray
an
Cup, which
endurance
is
race.
there's the Murray Cup,
Yeah.
which is like Formula One. Like, it's very like, this is how
Hmm.
you do this. But there's races that are kind of outside that, which are, if you can make your ship go faster, do it. So people will
Yeah.
like armor. Who needs it? Weapons, keep those. And because a lot of them are open gun races.
Yeah,
Um,
and you could have volatility where
yeah.
this gives you this much extra oomph, but
But if
if
somebody were to say find some exotic fuel somewhere out randomly in a system and refine it and say,
yes.
hey, this has 1 to 3% higher above the next highest fuel, you can have an edge in a race just because of
Hmm.
the fuel refining
and you
process.
and you could sell that for a premium.
Oh yeah,
you know yeah, there would totally be a market for that in all sorts of different ways. So I
spoilers.
could see that being get really interesting real quick. Let's see. Oh dang it, I lost my spot. Oh
Well,
yeah,
you
so
well you
um,
refine that. I wanted to mention this somewhere because this is all about the identity crisis that is the Starfarer. It also started life as an FPS level. Like, that was the
mhm,
plan. They came out with this, like, we're gonna build a big ship, and this was before big ships were a thing in Star Citizen. Even in the hangar, we had the Hornet, the Freelancer, possibly the Constellation, and the
300
Aurora,
series.
300 series. And
Yeah,
I don't know if the Constellation was in yet. I think it was in a very rough state, but they were going to be reworking that at least 3 more times. Anyway, this was the first big ship that they were going to get into. Multiple decks, several rooms, captain's quarters, the whole shebang. And they're like,
they
we're
said
going
me around the verse that they had to make I forget what the luxury hangar's called, but they made
to Rebel in
that
York.
in order to fit this ship.
Yeah, okay.
It wasn't there before.
Okay.
Yeah.
I came in a couple of years late, so I'm retrospectively getting all this
I
information.
just rewatched it, so yeah,
Yeah.
I remember.
But their great idea was, because Star Citizen is an FPS focused game where you are a person, not a ship. They're gonna build it like an FPS level, so they're gonna take all the FPS level design mechanics that the team has, and they'll try and apply them to the interior. That being said, it came out as a map mouse maze instead of an actual ship or an actual livable space. And that's where we kind of been clawing back from ever since. And now with what's the last ship to come out? I mean the whole A just came out. What just came out before that? But the ship, the raft, that's been amazing. All these concepts in these ships that we're getting, the 400 series or the 400i, not series yet, has been such much better. That's not a sentence, but so much better, so much better. Thank you. In the terms of it's an FPS design, but it's built to be FPS utility, not an FPS battle, as the original idea of building big ships is. And so I just want to throw that extra bit in there as we're talking so much about fuel in the Starfarer. So sorry, I throw that wrench in there.
No, it makes sense because for all of us who have played Xenothreat, it's not a coincidence that they used the Starfarer as the ship you have to, one of the ships you have to board in order to get the cargo, from the Xenothreat who is on board, and you have to shoot them because it's an FPS map.
yeah, I hope that if we still have Xenothreat in like 3 or so years, like they because these are supposed to be supply trucks basically. There's no cargo trucks. It's just Starfarers. There's no holes basically. Like yeah, these carry fuel and they have a amount of interior stuff, but there's no like they're all fuel trucks plus whatever they can hold inside. They could and we're carrying boxes out. Wouldn't it be smarter to get a bigger box truck? If they wanted boxes, anyway. Tinfoil hat, all that. Moving on.
With everything that I've read so far, you can see how things surrounding the Starfarer are nebulous. It's our favorite word here. There's a whole bunch of, well, wait a minute. Does it do this? Does it do that? Does it do quantum fuel? What is quantum fuel? How do we get quantum fuel? It's a lot of uncertainty just because they hadn't thought these things out yet. This is 2016 when we were still hangar bound, and so they hadn't come up with the answers yet. But the last quote from that the shipyard fuel mechanic post, towards the end, it says, "Finally, quantum fuel will remain as is. It will only be consumed during quantum travel and refilled at designated stations like Cryastro."
Cryastro.
So that was the thing that, and maybe they just worded it wrong, in order to, it is a bit muddy, like Othmion is saying. I think they just worded it wrong. They weren't as good at the wordsmithing and weasel words as they are now. But that one threw me for a bit of a loop, just because as I read before, on Massive Haul and the MISC Starfarer, designed to collect and refine quantum fuel in flight. But then they're saying that will only be consumed during quantum travel and refilled at designated stations like Cryastro. It didn't jive, and so yeah, a little weird. And so moving on, we had a bit of a gap because the alpha moves out into space, and we've got the persistent universe at this point. And so there's a lot more information coming out. We have the Starfarer, and all it's good for is hauling a little bit of cargo. There's no refueling mechanics or anything, obviously. But on March 30th, 2019, Chris Roberts penned probably one of my favorite Spectrum posts, because it is a detailed, essentially diatribe on how quantum drives work and how quantum travel is going to work in game, because the quantum travel we have now is placeholder. It's not the real thing. So that link is in there. Please go read it. It is very illuminating. It is from the the horse's mouth.
Literal. Well, not literal. No.
Yeah.
What words? I don't know. Not literally, but the highest you can get. There we go.
Yeah. The buck stops with him. Pretty. We all know it. But he says, the first quote from there that I picked out: to create a negative energy density, you need exotic matter, which is why quantum fuel is different, separate than thruster propulsion fuel. And so this is to me, from what I found, the first real confirmation that quantum fuel probably isn't going to come from the same source. Um,
Good.
oh, yeah, I was just reading the chat. Sorry.
Yep.
That was the first, out of everything that I read, that was the first confirmation to me that quantum fuel was not going to come from the same source as thruster fuel. Prior to that, we really didn't have any confirmation because we didn't know, how it was going to work. The fuel just came from the station, and we didn't know how it got there. Um,
Magic.
and then he goes on to say, "We don't have it. We don't have it in the game yet, but our plan is to allow players to harvest, mine quantum matter." He says quantum matter. He doesn't say quantanium or anything like that. It hasn't been a thing yet. They still haven't figured out what quantum matter is. Is it an exotic gas or something like that? Is it a solid? We don't know where it comes from. That's why he said harvest slash mine. This would be different than collecting regular thruster fuel, which is accomplished by scooping up various gases. Dense, inert ones would be best from atmospheres or space clouds slash nebula. Quantum matter would likely be quite hard to find, dangerous to mine, and very valuable. Think of coaxium from Solo, a Star Wars story. Mining quantum matter, and he says mining this time, but before he said mining harvesting, will be part of the harvestable entities work we have planned for Q2 and may come online with the Q3 fuel work. Well, the Q3 fuel work didn't end up being a thing. Um,
Back in
yeah,
2019.
yeah, got delayed. But it's interesting that he says at this point, basically that quantum matter is going to be hard to find, dangerous to mine or harvest, and very valuable. But it's going to be different than you would. You're not going to be scooping it like we do thruster fuel with gases. And so that was a bit where we're trying to start to diverge from the, well, wait a minute, the um, the Starfarer, when it was 3 years prior designed to collect and refine quantum fuel in flight. Well, the Starfarer doesn't have any way to mine. It has scoops for getting dense gases um, for thruster fuel, but it basically to me it's saying that at this point the scoop you're not going to be scooping um, quantum matter, um, this rare thing, and that's where, well, it's like, well, wait a minute, okay, the Starfarer was initially going to be doing quantum fuel. We thought, maybe it's just refining it now, but not scooping it. What's going on? Yay, more nebulousness. We're still pushing our way through this gas cloud, looking for the source of the signal here. Moving on to the next post that I found, which was a com link for Star Citizen Alpha 3.9, May 1st, 2020. Introduced a volatile mineable ore. Quantanium is a widely available. Wait a minute, didn't Chris Roberts a year prior say that it was rare? You know, um, and that's why, because Chris said it was rare and Alpha 3.9 they said is widely available. I think that the description in Alpha 3.9 is relevant to Stanton. I think in other systems it will be much more rare. I think Stanton, is particularly valuable because places like the Air and Halo have large deposits of quantanium. But who knows? Remains to be seen. That's my tinfoil hat on that. But it says quantanium is a widely available and highly unstable ore used in the production of quantum fuel. Used in the production. So it's not the only thing that goes into this. Um, going to that back to that refinery conversation, once it is mined, care must be used in the speed and manner in which it is transported. Not only does it degrade over time, which we know, big bada boom, but any impact will cause it to deteriorate further. The more degraded the quantanium, the more unstable it is, and the higher the risk of exploding. When a dangerous threshold is crossed, the player will receive a visual audio warning and will have the option to eject all cargo, or the desync will just make it blow up in your face. Uh, Failing to eject risks the ship taking damage or being destroyed. Given the risk, successful delivery of quantanium will be a lucrative endeavor, which it still is.
Yeah.
And now we're getting to the meat of the problem. Um, the next thing is the link that Othmian found from the Inside Stardust in the Sweet Gadget of Mine, Fall 2021, linked in the show notes, of course. Dan Truffin says, "We are looking right now at," and I literally copied word for word his statement so it would be in proper context. "We are looking right now at ship refining and getting the Starfarer to be able to refine whatever the prospector and molar harvesting right there on the spot together. And that's what we think will close that lovely gameplay loop of resource acquisition for mining."
I'm gonna go out on a
So,
branch here. I'm gonna play devil's advocate, tinfoil hat, whatever you want to call it. That sentence was them looking into what they needed for mining. I assume somewhere between this and the next post, somebody said, "What about the refining ship?"
mhm.
So I'm gonna say that quote is because of everything you said, that quote seems out of place so far. Because everything with the Starfarer has been fuel, 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 and that sentence says to me that they saw like, hey, we need to refine minerals. Starfarer we have in game now has a refinery on it. Why don't we just hook them in? And then somebody's like, wait, but that's a fuel boat. And so that's probably where it diverged into this is why we have the expanse now. So continue.
Yeah. I think that is a distinct possibility, but like Othman said in the chat, that's too good and direct a sentence to be like a goof.
Not
And
a goof, but a like that's where they
I
were
can
at the
see it.
time.
But this wasn't long ago. This was, um, oh gosh, what's the date? I'm gonna pull it back up real
Fall
quick.
2021.
Yeah, and this was November 4th. So this is after
When
after
when
the
was the
the refinery ships sprint had already gotten started, I think. But that's why I'm like, okay,
hmm.
Dan Truffin is a gameplay designer guy. You
Mm-hmm.
know, he's I forget what his exact title is, but whereas John Crew is the guy who builds ships, this is the guy. Dan Truffin is one of the lead guys for developing all the gameplay systems that we get with the ships, and the technology going into them. And he very specifically says, you know, be able to refine whatever the prospector and the mole are harvesting right there on the spot together, and that's what we think will close that lovely gameplay loop of resource acquisition for mining. And he says mining specifically. Um, and it doesn't say refueling, refining, anything like that. And so that's where, you know, this gets really, because you don't just mine quantanium, you mine everything, and so that's where the confusion is because, not long after it wasn't just a few weeks ago, but literally it's a quarter separated is John Crew's statement that we'll get to at the end that Othman linked in his post. So this is, in my opinion, this is a very legitimate question, and that's why I wanted to highlight it and try and
Yeah.
bring some attention to it via the podcast so that we can get some more upvotes and get some clarification. Because even though John's statement is a bit more up to date, the time difference is real. It's not like this was 2016, which is when a lot of this information came out, and 2022. This is 4 months.
Yeah.
And John Crew is the ship guy, but
And
Dan Truffin is one of the gameplay guys.
director. I just went back to the video. Assistant design director for the Persistent Universe. This is like Z him. Like it's really close. Like he is design director for the Persistent Universe. Or design Assistant design director. Yeah, it's assistant design director for content in the persistent universe. So he's pretty up there. So there's almost no way that could that yeah, that was
Mm-hmm.
up to date
He,
to say the
he
least.
this is the guy who's probably has a large hand in developing the refinery process. So it's like, did he really misspeak? Um, P9 TV just asked a good question in chat. So is harvesting the same as mining? And you know what? Adjectives. It's one of those things where it's like it could you could say you're harvesting minerals when you're mining minerals, but you could also say that harvesting is when you're going and using your fuel scoop in the atmosphere of a gas giant or a nebula gas cloud. So it's kind of hard to
Yeah.
100% differentiate. I think of harvesting as something different, but I don't think we have anything
If we
concrete from
take
CIG that says
if
either
we
way.
take like the examples from both what is harvest, like if you go with a combine harvest a wheat crop, that's basically slurping it up into a combine and you have your stuff already. You're just putting it into a tank. Or fuel scooping, you are harvesting the gas and it's in a tank. But mining is specific. You are cracking a rock, you are digging, you are
Hmm.
pulling minerals out of another mineral. It's it's not all there for you to just stick to the side and it's done. So that is what I would say for the difference between harvesting and mining. You don't mine crops and uh you don't harvest
Yeah.
iron.
Um, and so the next thing that we got about the Starfarer was in the Inside Stardust in fall 2021, a Space Odyssey, and Jared Huckabee quote from him as new additions to the exterior walkway. So that gang what's the word for that
Gangway,
gangway
scaffolding,
scaffolding, yeah, that exterior part that's exposed to space that you walk around on to look at the tanks and stuff. But as new additions to the exterior walkway will allow it to take canisters of newly mined fuel from other spaceships for processing.
what kind of process?
So Jared, Jared is usually really good, and this is Weasel words. I think this is Weasel words at its finest because Jared is an expert at this. God love it, but it says take canisters of newly mined fuel. So to me, with him saying mined fuel, I'm thinking I'm thinking that's leading towards, yeah, P9. So now I can mine fuel again. Thanks, Jared.
This
What
is
does
this
it
is
even
this is
mean?
why this is an entire segment on what on earth is going on.
Hmm. Yeah, because it again, here we are in that in this nebulous environment. We're totally lost. Everybody's here reading the same thing I am, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, what the f? Every other year, it's something different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he says take canisters of newly mined fuel. To me, that when he says canisters of newly mined fuel, I'm thinking that it is um, the the ore containers off the prospector in the mole of quantanium, um, for processing. That's what I think it means, because if you look at the images in that ISC, you can see what looks like it could be a pretty decent connection for a bag of either of those sizes. Um, but it definitely doesn't say anything about um, not refining quantum fuel or anything like that. But it says mined fuel. It doesn't say mined material. So again, here we are. It's like, well, wait a minute. Jared's using weasel words. It's hinting towards refining fuel, but it's saying mined things. Mm, all right. I also put in the show notes, a link for Inside Sources and Fuel Injection Winter 2022, which is the one where they showed off everything about refueling, how the whole process works. And I included an image of the UI at 3:51, 3 minutes and 51 seconds. And it shows, the Starfarer, still having a scoop, still having a refinery, and having some sort of pump, and those things, having tabs where you can click, inactive, active, and so the refinery is there, the scoops are there, ostensibly, it can refine, fuel at a minimum and take mined material. We just don't know if it's only going to be able to refine, you know, mined, quantanium or not. And then the last thing is the link that Othmian pulled, the most recent one from Expanse Glance, with John Cruz, quote, and I took the whole quote so that it wouldn't be out of context. We have refineries on other ships, such as the Starfarer. On other ships, such as the Starfarer. Um, and so I'm assuming he's alluding to the 100i and the Freelancer Dur, but they are more specialized into purely doing fuel.
And now we're back to the Starfarer only doing fuel.
Yeah,
Okay.
it says, but they are more specialized. Not they are specialized. They are more specialized. So,
this is the
I
problem with everything that was invented pre 2015.
yeah, exactly, and some things even later than that. And I wish we had a clear answer. We are in our Carrick, slowly plotting a course through a nebula, trying to find the source of this signal as it's bouncing around all over the place. That is the mental image of what's going on here. But it is these various statements, and quotes from different pieces of documentation that are pretty all over the place, regarding the Starfarer and its capabilities, regarding refining, regarding quantum fuel, all of this. Um, that it has a very tumultuous history throughout, the development of Star Citizen, and so it really makes it easy to see how, not only is that wording from Dan Trevin pretty effing clear. I didn't swear, I said effing. Pretty clear. But the Starfare has never been consistent.
Nope.
It's never been consistent, and so there's no reason to think that, oh, he just misspoke and the Starfare has consistently only been this, when that is absolutely not the case. So, um, that was what I really wanted to highlight, and why I wanted to draw attention to this, this question as part of the Spectrum Pulse, so that way our viewers and listeners, can, contribute to the conversation. If there's something that I missed, give Othmian's post on Spectrum an upvote. So hopefully someone will give us a concrete answer that, I can add to this, and will go down in history. And for so long we were dazed and confused, and now we know.
Yeah. Another thing I'd say to Othmion, is maybe also post something similar on the Ask a Dev forums as well, not just the Musashi Industrial Starflight Concern category.
Yeah.
Getting stuff upvoted there will actually get you noticed by devs. In the hangar ones or the ship manufacturer ones, not so much. They tend to stay out there. So if you do it on Ask a Dev, we will be posting the show notes. So if you want to use any of our information, that will be up probably tomorrow. So you can pull from there. But yeah, definitely link it though in your original post. Link the Ask a Dev post. That way, our viewers can go to our show notes, get to your post, and get to the Ask a Dev post.
Yeah. So far, I just refreshed it, and we are up to 21 votes on Othmian's post,
Nice.
and 33 really well thought out replies.
Oh yes, I'm sure. Very well thought out. What is it? Is that it? Are we finally through?
That is it for the Spectrum Pulse for this episode. Um,
Wow.
and yeah, so how long have we been going?
An hour and 8. So we're pretty
Oh,
good.
well, that's not bad.
Nope.
My scanner anomaly. Moving on to the scanner anomalies,
Bum,
are
bum,
the
bum. We
regular
need to get
segment.
we need to get like a no, sound
Hmm.
transitions for all these. So yeah, we'll
See,
work on quality later. We'll quality
I'm
as we're
looking.
going.
Yeah,
We just straight posted it over to Ask a Dev. Okay. So for everyone in the Twitch chat can go over there and go upvote that as well.
we would appreciate it.
All right. What
But
is your scanner anomalies?
so for our first time listeners, first time callers, scanner anomalies are like a spectrum pulse, but these are things that we personally, Nazeris and I, were curious about. Not something that we found, something that we wanted to know about, and we dug into of our own volition. We were flying around and on our own time, not when we were in the Pathfinders carrick or whatever pathfinding ship we're supposedly in, and something came up on scans, and we're like, you know what, I'm gonna go check that out. I've got nothing better to do. And so my scanner anomaly, and I'm having fun creating or coming up. We are having fun coming up with creative names for these segments. But mine is called "She Thinks My Tractor's Sexy," because after watching, and I came up with this while doing my homework on the Starfarer, because let's see, where was it? Oh
Uh,
yeah, so and I'll get to it, but because the Starfarer is going to be getting a tractor beam for its for the ability to take on um, things to refine, minables, whatever they may be. We don't know. Um, but it was mentioned in a monthly report, and that's one of the things I'll be going over. And so, in doing my homework, I was like, "Wait a minute, the Starfarer is getting a tractor beam.
mhm.
What's going on with ship-based tractor beams?" And as most Star Citizen fans will know, we have our tractor beam attachment to the Pyro multi tool, and it's handy for moving around those little boxes, but it has a weight limit. A weight limit. I think it's 50 kilograms. Does that sound right? I think it's
I
um,
haven't looked at
50.
the UI enough. It moved boxes. I'm happy.
I think the lore narrative explanation is that the little attachment can lift things up to 50 kilograms. There's also it's actually in development right now. Um, it's on the progress tracker. There's the handheld industrials
Which we just saw in
tractor
last
tool.
ISC on the back of the
Hmm.
or no, one or two ago. The bigger handheld tractor beam by Gray Cat. It looks
Yes,
great and it transforms when you start to use it. I can't wait. It's gonna be so cool.
the animations. You can imagine what they're going to look like, and they're going to be really
I
cool.
want when you start it up to just a nice shift back to like, "Oop, okay, I got it."
Maybe some recoil or something like
Hmm.
that. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, wear crossbow. Actually, if you want to know about the crossbow, go back and watch a couple of
episode
the
one.
episode 1. We did a part on the crossbow, so that is over on my YouTube channel. If you go down below the stream, you can find the link to the YouTube channel.
Um, but yeah, so we have the attachment for the Pyro multi tool already in game, and we know how that works. We have seen the images of the dedicated handheld tractor beam. Just like there's a dedicated salvage tool, there's a dedicated cutting tool. We have the dedicated medical device. So for every attachment you have for your Pyro multi tool, there is also a dedicated tool made by one manufacturer or another. Most of them are made by Greycat. These industrial tools, the cutter, the salvaging tool, which is also ostensibly a repair tool, and the tractor beam are all made by Grey Cat, along with the Pyro multi-tool. But there's also ships that are come equipped stock with tractor beams, as well as ships that have um, utility mounts, just like weapons mounts, but they're not for mounting weapons; they're for mounting utility devices, whatever that may be. Um, Examples are the 315P, the Caterpillar, the constellation Taurus, which actually has a tractor beam turret. The entire Cutlass line is originally supposed to have a tractor beam for loading cargo through that back hatch door. I don't know if all of them are going to have it, or if it's just going to be the Cutlass Black. I would assume they would, especially like the for search and rescue, or for picking up, prisoner pods and stuff like that for the blue and the red.
Does the red have side doors?
It has. That's the thing, is the red and the blue. I think both have the. I know the red. I think the blue. It's been a long time since I've been in the blue. They have the circular.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Like if I was gonna have a tractor beam on the Cutlass Red, it'd be out the back door.
yeah. No,
But
I would
this
think it
this
would
is
be
two
out the back
different
door.
designs, so this when we got the information on the tractor beams, that it was a different design for the Cutlass Red, so it
Mhm.
might have switched around a bit.
The Gladiator was initially concepted to have some modularity, and that you could remove the turret and have a little cargo pod with a tractor beam. Whether that ends up happening, I'm kind of
That's a weird
dubious
ship to
about it,
have one.
but it's in there. The Nomad is supposed to have a utility mount for tractoring cargo into the cargo bay. Assumedly, it would be operated from some sort of panel. The
Probably right behind
Orion,
the window.
yeah, the Orion, the giant, massive capital class miner, has
Uh,
multiple tractor beam turrets for moving rocks around. The Raft has a tractor beam for positioning cargo containers. Um, uh, you know, Ostensibly while you're in space. Who knows what the lifting capacity of these things is going to be? But for moving them into place for locking onto the raft's cargo arms. The Raylan also is said to have utility mounts with tractor beams. The Reclaimer, um, I believe that those has utility mounts. I couldn't find whether they're mounts or not, but I am told, it's been a long time since I've been on the Reclaimer, but the Reclaimer has like operator stations where you would operate the tractor beams remotely, like a remote turret.
yeah.
The SRV uses tractor beams in order to hold onto ships to do the tow truck thing, but it can also use it for containers, and it has three of them, these like big tractor plate things. And that's where, if you look at the SRV concept art from when it was released, is when we got I think that's when we got the first look at the updated appearance of what tractor beams will actually look like.
Yeah.
Um, the Starfarer now has one, even though it was never concepted to have it. Um, P9TV is asking if the Reliant has one. I don't. It did not pop in my list when I was doing a search. It may. I don't know much about the Reliant. I'll have to look. Nazaris, can you check to see if
I can indeed.
the Reliant?
Yep.
It may. I don't know which one it would be. Othmion, thanks for dropping by. We really appreciate you stopping by and taking a listen. I hope it was informative, and I hope we can get your post the the coverage it needs to get the answers we all deserve. P9TV says it has utility mounts in response to the Reliant. Do you know which one? Because there's four, right? I can never remember the names. Tana, Sen, and I forget what the others.
Core and
Utility mount caps. Interesting. So ostensibly, if it has utility mount caps,
yeah.
or has a utility mount, it could mount a tractor beam. Depending on where the utility mount is on the ship, will denote whether a tractor beam is going to be useful, um, or how useful it is. And then also the Vulture has, per the information about the Vulture, the Vulture has a a sort of bespoke tractoring system for pulling material in between its claws in order for it to be salvaged. Um, so in the show notes, I've got an image that was pulled from the old archives of the Voyager Direct store from the old Star Citizen
I love seeing
website
it.
that shows the old model for what's called the Sure Grip tractor. Um, it's a size 2 tractor beam, and this is the one that was supposed to come stock on the 315P. Um, and then in the show notes, actually, um, oh, Nazeris is walking away. Anyway, I'll continue. When Nazeris gets back, I think I'm going to have him pull up these pictures so we can show them on screen, but you can look at them on your own time as well. The next image I have is from Alpha 314, showing it's uh, a sort of release art because that's when the Taurus was getting ready to release of the Taurus using its tractor beam turret to tractor cargo onto its cargo bay. Um, Nazareth, are you able to do that transition thing so you can pull up these images so we can
I
show them
can
on screen?
certainly attempt. Let's see if everything works properly. Go. There we go. We have images. For those of you who are watching live, yes. So continue, and I'll scroll through the bits.
Sweet. Can you pull up Can you pull up the Sure Grip tractor? The
Sure grip.
previous image.
Okay. There you go. Maybe.
It's on the OneNote.
Yeah,
You have the
it's
OneNote
loading.
open? Oh, okay.
There you
But you can see how that looks on screen.
go.
Yeah,
Old is
old
what it
school.
looks like.
It looks like a big camera or something, or a projector. But you can see the sort of like pintle mounts on it that allow it to like articulate and everything. But then if you go to the image you had up first, the constellation Taurus, if you look closely, you can see that it has many years later the same sure grip tractor um, model for the tractor beam, even though this is after the SRV concept was released, showing a different type of tractor beam. And then if you go to that screenshot I got from Alpha 314 showing the Taurus, it's a better in-game screenshot. And maybe you can zoom in on the tractor beam turret. Is that possible? You can see quite clearly that is definitely the old Sure Grip tractor beam model. And so, we're looking at the progress of tractor beams in order to try and gather, okay, where are they now? What's the holdup? Where are what's the status of ship-based tractor beams? And that's when moving on from that, the next mention I found on tractor beams was the Star Citizen Monthly Report, August 2022, under Art Ships, Ship Art Team. Refueling work was also done on the MISC Starfarer. The refueling arm mentioned last month is now complete. We now are going to be having that in game soon. It's in the PTU. With focus turning to the tractor beam assembly at the rear that forms part of the refining feature. So we now know that the Starfarer is going to have a tractor beam mounted somewhere on the rear. We don't know where exactly. That's going to be used to bring, assumedly, um, the mining bags into place so that they can take on the material and refine it. Whether that's all things mined or just quantinium, we don't know. The next thing I found on tractor beams was the monthly report for October 2021. This time it's the art team for weapons instead of ships. The weapon feature team, and I'll have another image for you to pull up here in a second,
Yep.
but you can transition. The weapon feature team began the month working on the Firestorm Kinetic Size 3 bombs for the Crusader Hercules and artwork for the upcoming ship tractor beam asset. And so, to me, when I was reading this, I was like, well, wait a minute. The Taurus is in game. You can see the tractor beam asset on the Taurus in game. It doesn't work, but you can see it. So, artwork for the upcoming, if it's just artwork, to me that tells me that it's, you know, something new. And so I was, kind of confused when I was going through this. And the next thing I found was the sneak peek image from the newsletter that we get, in our email on Fridays. Um, from, let's see, it was October 29th, 2021. So I think this is the newsletter the week after. It was a week or two after CitizenCon, or shortly after the CitizenCon, and it shows. I forget what the caption was. I forgot to write down what it was. But it says beam 2 when you save the image. So to me that means it's a size 2 tractor beam because it's in front of a 315p, which is supposed to come stock with a size 2 tractor beam. But we already showed you what the original Sure Grip tractor beam looked like that was supposed to come on the 315p. That ain't it. So this is an entirely new tractor beam asset. They've completely reworked tractor beams or the tractor beam asset since the Taurus released. Was it just last year or was it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just last year. Um, and so, assumedly, the Taurus is going to be getting these tractor beams mounted and then removing the old model when these go live.
I mean, this one looks better.
I think it looks great. It matches, and that's why I thought it was interesting that they released the Taurus with the old tractor beam asset. But they had the concept art for the SRV tractor beam that looks like this, but much bigger for these giant tractor beam plates.
I would not be
Um,
shocked if the process of making this asset was you see the concept of the tractor beam on the SRV, cut that off, build into a standalone weapon. Done.
yeah, a standalone asset,
Yeah.
for to put on utility mounts,
Mm-hmm.
because the ones on the SRV are very bespoke, and big and powerful compared to these. They're meant for moving ships.
Yeah.
The final source I found on the state of tractor beams was in the again Inside Sources in A Space Odyssey Fall 2021, December 2nd. Let's see, Jared at 550, Jared Huckabee at 551. Um, this was looking at the uh, continuing work on the whole C, which is really interesting because if you've known about the whole C, I don't, as far as I'm aware, none of the holes have ever had mention of having tractor beams.
Well, there was the whole CDE post Q&A, and I say CDE because those were the ones who got all the questions asked about them. And the lore post about them had an entire movie set built on a D, I
Hmm.
think. And basically the entire original concept for the whole series, especially the bigger ones, was excessive and I mean excessive modularity. You could put a
Yeah.
turret on it, like a standalone turret, just somewhere in the cargo grid. You could build an entire apartment. You could, ship ships. You could ship tanks, boxes, whatever it is. So putting weird things on the grid itself um, would not shock me. But there was also, let me see if I can find it real quick, an image where I'm pretty sure it had um, tractor beams on it. There you go. It's an original. One of the original concept had something that looked like tractor beams. But what about tractor beams then?
Oh, I thought you were pulling something up.
I am, but I'll need a second.
Oh, okay. But in the video, and it actually shows it, so I encourage you to go back and look at these because this is the first time they've shown this. As far as I'm aware, for how tractor beams will be operated outside of tractor beam turrets. So I think it was really cool, and they're showing it on the whole C. Um, when the hulls were never, 100% said that they had utility mounts for tractor beams. They're just, supposed to be very modular, but that was when everything was going to be modular because,
Modular.
because modularity. So, it's one of those things. That's one of the big things where I'll believe that when I see it. Um, but seeing the whole C getting it when, as far as I knew we, had never been told that the whole C was going to get tractor beams, and now, um, let's see, what did he say? Uh, Jared says, and experimenting with some early attempts at new building block screens for tractor beams and the like. So these would be building block screens, or a remote screen, remote, screens for remote interfacing or remotely working with, like remote turrets, but for tractor beams. But he says, and the like. So my next point was like, and the like. Wait, what? You know, what are the things are they intending to use these for? Because we don't have much information about utility mounts other than using them for tractor beams. So that got my little inner monologue spinning. Ooh, what else are they thinking about for this? But it was cool to think that they're planning on having the whole sea having tractor beams or beams for the loading and unloading of cargo. Um, when the whole sea releases following the release of the cargo factor, and so we can assume that part of what is blocking the release of the whole sea is further work on the whole sea being able to unload and load its cargo using tractor beams, using various Argo ships, that sort of thing. Um, so I found that little tidbit as a really great piece of confirmatory information, but also, ooh, that's kind of curious. But then he also goes on later on in the episode, and he says, and speaking of, or right after that, and speaking of tractor beams, the vehicle content team has begun building the size 1, 2, and 3 tractor beams that can be equipped to a variety of vehicles, bringing with it some long waiting functionality to ships like the 300s seen here, the Caterpillar, and more.
Aye.
um, yeah. And so, a size 3 tractor beam, it's got to be pretty big. It's got to be able to move some pretty good size things. When you think about, okay, our little handheld tractor beam can move a 50 kilogram crate. You know, imagine how big a size 3 on a ship. How much
Hopefully, I would imagine a size 3 goes up to the 2x2x16 like cargo containers.
that would be my thought, is that if anything is going to get size 3 tractor beams, it might be like the whole sea.
Or the SRV.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking the whatever the SRV gets might be even bigger. I don't know, or might be bespoke and just stronger or something like that.
You think it'll
But
be kind of uh like the ship that breaks the standard, the scale that we have. Like we've had size 1, 2, 3 weapons, and like they reworked the one of the or they then we got size 4 with the Constellation, then we got like size 6 with the 600, and now we have size 7 with the Ares. They bring in new sizes with new ships.
hmm
That makes sense.
yeah,
And
and
about
so
modularity, P9 was asking, that is in the last episode of Pathfinders.
oh yeah, yeah, all sorts of things that we have covered so far. And so I did ask to confirm with Jake, because I saw the work on tractor beams. We've seen the concept art. We've seen mentions in monthly reports. I asked him, I was like, "Hey, have ship-based tractor beams ever been on the progress tracker?" I couldn't remember if I'd seen it and then it was removed or something like that. Because I couldn't find anything when I was searching. And he said, "No, it's never been on the progress tracker. Handheld tractor beams, other than the dedicated one." Um, that predates the progress tracker, but he says they are not on the progress tracker and haven't been, because they aren't ready for full production. And so I'm kind of surprised there wasn't a sprint for them, for the concept art, considering it was in the monthly report. But no big deal. But I think that because, um, they are still working on the whole C, um, and because the Starfarer, has had work on it, as part of, its refinery processes. I definitely anticipate ship-based tractor beams coming on the progress tracker and being a thing in the not too distant future. So that way, these ships that have them, get the functionality out of them. Because with the cargo refactor, and us, assuming that we're going to be getting different size cargo crates and larger cargo crates, if without a tractor beam, how are you going to move them in space onto your ship? And if all we have is the little one that does 50 kilos, what are you going to do with if that one SCU container, which is 8 of the little boxes that we move right now, it weighs more than 50 kilos. You're not going to be able to move it with a handheld tractor. And so, you know, I'm assuming that, with the cargo refactor, we will get the dedicated industrial tractor, um, the handheld one, in 318. But, when are ships going to get theirs? When are the ships that need this functionality going to get that, so that, you're not, using a handheld, you know, dedicated tool for this, for ships that have it. Especially as we get larger containers, like maybe the first iteration of the cargo refactor will only have, containers up to a certain size, and until we get ship-based tractor beams, we're not going to get those larger containers. I don't know.
Yeah, that is one of the things. Like, the more I hear about the work going on, the less exciting the cargo refactor gets, because there's so many other things being blocked right now. So that is definitely one that is very up in the air. And what is the cargo refactor? We're gonna have to do something about that closer to the release of it. So sometime in the next 3 months. So yeah, is that all you had for your anomaly?
That is what I have for my
Awesome.
anomaly. That is the state of ship-based tractor beams. I am very excited for them. I'm
Absolutely.
excited for the dedicated tractor tool, the bigger, handheld one.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited for ship-based tractor beams in conjunction with the cargo refactor. I think it's going to be,
Yeah. When I
at a
first saw the sneak peek with the tractor, I'm like, is that our first beam weapon? I want beam
mhm,
weapons so bad.
yeah.
Like,
Okay, and I think refining is in on the horizon as well. And in order for ships to do refining, we're going to need the cargo refactor and we're going to need tractor beams.
yeah, the cargo refactor is the start of a whole bunch of just stuff that ships need to do. It's basically the resource management of ships. So it's not the resource management, which is a different thing. That's internal resources, but it is as far as universe resources. Anyway,
Oh, did you pull up that image, of the sneak peek? Did we show that one?
I
I
did
forget.
not find it.
Oh, it's
The sneak peek thing. Yes, I did. Yes, yeah,
okay. We did share that one. I
yeah,
couldn't remember if
yeah.
we put that one on
Yep,
screen.
yeah, we did.
Cool.
I got all the images in there. All right, moving on to my scanner anomaly is more of a general discussion, and I'm glad there's a bunch of people in chat to help with this. It's very simple, and I got basically no notes for it. It's what ships does Star Citizen actually need to be putting in the game in the short to near future? And this is actually a question mostly because of HG Vertigo, and he was on stream, and somebody asked what he thought of the Expanse. Terrible name. Um, and he said, stop putting in ships. We don't need any more ships. All the ships that we need are covered. But I'm like, there's got to be something that the universe still needs, especially now. And I want to try and keep the discussion to a near term, because I foresee power creep in this game going insane. Everyone's going to own a carrier eventually. It's going to happen. Just accept the future, okay? But near term, most people are running around in single seat fighters in, like, at most a Vanguard. We're getting fueling in. We don't really need fueling in right now. We are pretty much within a easily distance. If we can see our little ticker saying you can't jump that far, so we'll just jump to a closer thing and refuel, then jump farther. But with Pyro coming in and possibly, let's say, just Nyx after that, let's try and keep it within that realm of possibility. So, what kind of ships do you think, both in chat and Tree, do you think we should be looking at to actually have in Star Citizen? And, like, I thought about this a little bit, and the one thing that always comes to mind is a ground-based hauling ship, but we don't have reason to go ground-based anyway right now. So we would need something to make us go to the ground before we need ground-based ships. So that's off the thing.
What do you mean by ground-based ship?
Vehicles. Sorry, ground.
Oh, okay.
A truck, basically, an 18-wheeler. It always is the first thing that popped in my head.
Remember the from CitizenCon where they showed or was it Citizen, or when they revealed the Spartan?
Yeah.
Well,
yes, but also CitizenCon, they had the AA turrets.
Yeah, the missile turrets, AA turrets, all that sort of stuff. We always bring it back to getting shot down, your ship getting shot down.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, of course, going to be, a thing you have to worry about if you're in unfriendly territory. But we know that they want to have, weather to be a factor. We know that they, want other, other things to factor in your ability to fly your ship, in a planet or on a planet.
Mm-hmm.
There's all sorts of different ways it could go. I mean, you remember was that 26? It was the 2016 CitizenCon presentation with the sandworm on Lear
Yeah.
3. Was it Lear? I forget which
Yeah,
Lear
it
it is.
was
I
Layer
think it's
3.
Lear 3. Yeah.
Which was, interesting enough, I'm pretty sure Layer 3 is also the one with the cultists.
Yeah, and they had a giant sandstorm. They had, I forget what they called the atmospheric disturbance, was the alert that the Connie pilot got,
Mm-hmm.
but basically said, you can't continue. You gotta land or turn around. And so they decided to land. And then there's gonna be those things.
Mm-hmm.
You are going to have severe weather that is just not safe to fly in. Just like we have for planes and aircraft now.
Mm-hmm.
You can imagine how extreme the weather on non-terrestrial planets is going, could be.
Yeah.
Um, so we're going to have need for ground vehicles, just for stability purpose, for terrain. One of the planets I've hoped for is an arboreal planet, just absolutely covered with trees, and the canopy is high but super thick, and
Mm-hmm.
so you can only but it's like maybe protected or something like that. Like maybe this is where the Osoians live or something, and you can only land in clearings. There's very few clearings, but after that, you're on foot or by vehicle going on dirt roads to traverse these planets to get to these outposts that you can't even really see from the air. It maybe could only detect at a certain range. um so that's the thing I have for for ground vehicles. That, and me being an FPS combat guy. For those of you who don't know, 0311 is my former MOS, military occupational specialty, when I was an infantry marine many years ago. So that part of the game is totally my bag. um, I'm a paramedic and flight paramedic now in the real life, both civilian and military. But my beginnings were as an infantry marine many moons ago.
And P9 says
P9,
also a repair ship in the near future.
P9, have you been in the Info Runners Discord recently? Because that is a discussion that has been brought up multiple times in their ship scrutiny chat, that I've partaken in, just because the Info Runners Discord is the home and capital of the cult of the Crucible, as well as the cult of the Endeavor.
Oh
They share
god.
a they share a home,
I
and
mean, as far as the repair ship goes, that's just Vulcan.
Well, so I love the Vulcan. I have a Vulcan.
Right.
I think
The Vulcan would be
anything with
great right now to come in
anything with
because
articulating VTOLs is just
chef's
so
kiss.
good.
But
Mhm.
the Vulcan actually has a pretty good role to fill right about now in the verse because we're going into Pyro. We're going to need refueling. We have a refueling ship, but the Vulcan can do it at a smaller scale. Salvage is about to come in. And salvage is repair just in reverse, and the Vulcan does repair. What else does it do? And then it does rearm. That's just another thing it can do. Like, obviously, there's the tech to get over, but as far as functionality, the Vulcan's actually a pretty good ship to get in the game. So,
I don't expect the Vulcan to be too far out,
yeah,
honestly.
it's just a really necessary ship for just like gameplay in
Yeah.
general.
We need drones, but with everything that they've done, I don't think drones, especially if they are working on building blocks screens to manage utility mounts and tractor beams. To me that was one of the things. Oh, that and I forgot to mention it. When they said tractor beams and the like, I thought of drone control.
Yeah, yeah. I just thought it just hit me that that might be the thing because
It hit me
drones
before. It
drones are
came back around.
not autonomous. They are not AI controlled yet.
Hmm.
So there has to be one pilot per drone. And that's why the Reclaimer has drone pilot seats
Hmm.
specifically. I don't know of any other ship that has drone pilot seats.
Well, the Carrack and the Vulcan, but
Do,
yeah.
do they have do they have the amount of seats per drones?
The Vulcan can carry 4 drones, but only 2 of them can be operated at a time.
Okay, so it has two
And
drone pilot seats.
I know the Carrack has 2 drone pilot seats, but I don't remember how many it's supposed to carry
Okay.
off the top of my head.
Yeah, they said they'll
I'd have to
revisit
look.
the drone room when the drones were going to come back, so the drone room may change in that.
I just know that those seats used to kill you when the Carrack first came out,
Oh,
so everybody stayed
jeez.
away from them. You admired them from afar.
Oh, okay. Um, let's see. I mean, the Reliant all need help, but the news van that can be a thing, but that's more of a needs functionality in the game. But what kind of functionality is Star Citizen still missing? I mean, shuttle basically is the thing that comes to mind. Like we have the Pisces and it's the best shuttle, but it was the one thing that I thought when we got Origin was their shuttles that they have. That is an amazing civilian shuttle. And I think that should be a form of that should be like the little space bus should be a ship that is sold or is available for the civilian market in the game.
Well, the crap, what is it? The Crusader, the Genesis Starliner.
That's bigger. That's like the
No. But what I'm saying is going back into concept. It's on the progress tracker.
yeah, but that's
So
supposed
they
to be the nth degree of civilian transportation.
Yeah, I'm just saying if it's going back into concept, it means that they are likely thinking about putting it into production, which means they're likely thinking about people moving.
This is true. So we
Yeah.
just like they did mining. They said let's look at mining. Orion. What's the other side of the spectrum?
Yeah.
But,
Because
and then we got the
we don't really have
prospector.
an actual taxi ship.
So
We don't have
taxi
something for
ships
moving people short distances.
in all the design docs for taxi ships, it was any ship can be a taxi ship. You'll just get paid less. So you can pick someone up in a Reclaimer and call it a taxi. You can pick someone up in a Reliant or a Constellation or a 300 or whatever have you. 600 and all the Origin ships obviously are form fitted for people who like to pay lots of money for it. But basically all of the designs is you can fit people in it. But the component arrays of a shuttle are specifically very little as far as weapons or armor goes, but it is exceptional in the life support and seats department.
Yeah.
So
Seats, life support, maybe some creature comforts, and I would say, depending on who makes it, uh, have either more or less creature comforts and more or less efficiency as far as um,
Yeah, I can imagine a freelancer shuttle where
mhm,
the entire back is just seats. These
yeah,
bolted seats to the
a
cargo
bus.
bed.
It's a little greyhound or something.
Yeah, that would actually be really cool if it was like if they took the freelancer. Let's even say the freelancer max hull, and then put some raise the bed up a bit. So like put some whatever platform in the back, and then put windows in the side of the back. That'd actually be a really cool little bus.
Yeah, I think it's something that they're definitely going to be if they're getting ready to reconcept or put more concept effort into the Genesis Starliner. I imagine they're going to be thinking about other ships to do people transport. And I th- I think they're thinking about that because with server meshing coming, closer and closer to fruition, we're going to have a lot more NPCs running around. We
Mm-hmm.
may not get massive player counts anytime soon, but you don't have to have massive player counts to have lots of people walking around.
Yeah.
And so, we may get um, Blizzard is saying so like a larger MPUV. Yeah, I think Argo could do it. Something with more seats. Be able to take more people, especially for a little bit longer distance. An MPUV or like the Crusader shuttle could be good for going from um, your landing zone up to your low orbit station. Um, those really short hops and everything. Moving just lots of people really fast. Making money. But going from station to station, your low orbit station or from landing zone to landing zone with a dozen or 2 dozen people, paying a fare and stuff, and the people there are lots of players who are into space trucking.
Yeah.
They just want to drive around and haul containers. There's going to be players who want to be space taxi and bus drivers.
And not only
It
that,
doesn't.
there are definitely somebody. There's somebody because there's
You
all
got
sorts
cut
for
off.
all sorts. What is that? We're good.
Oh, Naz, can you hear me? Your audio.
Uh
Oh,
oh, Discord went out. Okay, we back.
weird. I got you.
Okay.
Cool.
There's if there are those who want to do space trucking, those who want to just be an engineer, a farmer, a builder, a combat pilot. There are those who want to do the hostessing, the flight attendants.
Yeah.
There has to be like all sorts for all sorts. Like it's
There are millions of citizens. There's going to be millions more. There's going to be people who want to do these things, especially in a role play
absolutely and
environment.
like to like even another one. Like I want to be a janitor. I want to if I work on a javelin. If there's one job I would want to do on a javelin, it's clean the floors. I don't know why. I just give me the mop. I want to be the replacement of the mouse droid. Okay, so there's got to be someone who wants to do the flight attendant thing. So,
Having mopped on board ship, I can promise you it will get really old really quick.
but it's a video
Naval
game. But anyway.
naval ships are disgusting places.
I hope so.
Yeah.
That's always one of the things. Um, and I'll let you introduce your idea that you had before the show for a ship that we need. Something about vehicles.
So I have I'm a big Anvil fan. The Valkyrie is my favorite ship because it's a drop ship, because made for delivering Marines to the combat zone. It is
So is
my
the
cup of tea.
Hercules.
Don't even get me started. You're doing this to antagonize me. The Hercules is not a drop ship. It is a transport,
But it has jump seats.
not a drop ship. Um,
If I drop it, it falls.
yes, yeah. The operative word being drop,
Uh huh.
but a drop ship, is um, a ship that is used for moving personnel, cargo, vehicles, and equipment from a carrier ship in orbit to the surface. That is by definition what it is. Even though we don't really have them in real life, there is a definition for it, um, and that's why the Hercules is not a drop ship. The Hercules is an amazing ship. It's an amazing star lifter. That's what it's called, the star lifter. You know, it it does starlift like we have airlift nowadays. You know, that's what its influence is it's meant to be the C5, C17 of the Star Citizen universe, and it does that job really well. Um, but you cannot live, you cannot put uh, a platoon, company, battalion of Marines and all their gear and equipment onto a Hercules. Um, you know, you could move all that with a bunch of Herculeses over a short distance, but you couldn't have them living on said ship or ships for a period of time. It is a point-to-point transport. It is not a you are the crew of the ship live on it. The people embarked on it do not. And that is the difference between how I deployed when I was in the Marines, where I sailed over on my deployment. I was embarked on a ship for months at a time. First deployment was mostly in Iraq, but we sailed on the way there. Second deployment, we were embarked on ship for months before getting to Iraq, and then on the way back. But you're embarked on a ship. You live on that ship with the sailors and the crew. All your equipment is on that ship, and at any given time, anywhere you are able to deploy those assets onto a foreign shore. That's the whole point, is to have these units forward deployed, and basically patrolling around, ready to respond to whatever an incident may be. um, and it's the UE Marines would be definitely much more combat focused, but like I've done um, humanitarian missions in the Philippines. I've trained with other militaries in multiple countries and stuff. They do a whole lot of stuff. But so we already have a amazing dropship, the Valkyrie. We have other dropships that also fill different, more niche dropship roles. The Valkyrie just being sort of the generalist within. Um, but we don't have, and the Valkyrie is ostensibly deployed from a carrier ship that we do not have. We do not have a ship that would embark a bunch of Marines and all their equipment. We have Navy ships. We don't have Marine ships. And in the UE Marine lore, they have their own ships. They don't operate like the U.S. Marines or the UK Marines do now. And the Anvil Liberator lore specifically mentions that Anvil makes large scale um, troop and vehicle transports, and that the Liberator continues that tradition on a smaller scale. That's me paraphrasing, but it's
Mm.
an exact quote. And so when everybody says, "Oh, that's the Liberator," it's like, no, no, no. The Liberator is the baby version. The Liberator is a more utilitarian Hercules that's just less aerodynamic. Fulfills much the same role, similar to the way some landing ships from World War II worked. Um, that's how I see the Liberator, because it doesn't have room to embark anyone to deploy from that ship. When that ship is forward deployed, it is a point to point transport.
Hmm.
Same, just like the Hercules. And so, if Anvil in the lore, according to the Liberator release, makes essentially this carrier that Marines would deploy from, P9 TV, Liberator is a starter ship. Yes, 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 it is. That's the
So for
best way
this
I've heard.
tier, yeah, that's what they're talking about. Like this.
Yeah.
So this is like vehicle transportation as a function. So we have
Yeah.
mining as a function, we have exploration as a function, and we have cargo as a function. This
Yeah.
is vehicle transport as a function, not
Vehicle transport. I guess the Liberator and the Hercules would be like tied for like the medium or the second tier or something like that.
not.
The
This is
ship
not
that I
ground
want.
ship transport. This is vehicle transport.
Yeah.
The ground
Um.
ship, like plenty of things, can take ground ship. That's not a function.
hmm
Spaceship movement is a function. Spaceship
P9
shipping
TV
ships.
mentions a hovercraft, and if you look up the one that the Russians use, like it's a giant like seagoing hovercraft. It isn't like the LCACs that our Navy uses, that are from an assault ship, an LPD, LHD type ship. The Russian hovercrafts are friggin' huge. Um, but my idea is
Hmm.
for a Valkyrie variant that could carry a single heavy vehicle and deploy from this carrier that the UE Marines would use. And so it would basically, if you've looked at the way ships in Star Citizen are built, there are a whole bunch of pieces, stuck together. And each one of these pieces is actually an object container. Um, but if you removed the piece that is the cargo slash vehicle bay on the Valkyrie, and also removed the troop compartment ahead of it, you'd have to modify it a bit. But then you added some sort of gantry arms or something like that in order to latch on to a heavy vehicle. Um, P9TV is talking about like an SRV. You could use an SRV for this purpose because an SRV can carry a large container. It can tow a ship. I think you could use it for this purpose. The only thing is using it for this purpose in a combat environment.
Yeah,
I
you're
would be
bright
very
orange.
concerned. Yeah, on bright orange. But even if you painted it right, but a as a Marine who has conducted many uh, sea seaborne landings from different um, methods, um, I would be very concerned if the vehicle that I was riding in, getting ready to get dropped in, because as going from a drop ship versus a Liberator or Hercules, which would be landing rearward, from your conflict zone in order to offload in a more safe environment, without risking your great big giant ship. Um, this would be dropping very close to your front lines, very close to where the troops are hitting the beach, deploying from a standard Valkyrie. And if you were using tractor beams and you took a few hits and your power fluctuated, and then suddenly your Nova Tonk with your three-man crew plummets to the surface, it would be
Oh,
really bad. I would want something mechanical where it has to be released um, in order to put the vehicle on the ground, not held up by magical force fields that are subject to damage and power fluctuations. And so I'm going to drop a couple images in chat or in Discord.
okay.
If you can pull it up,
Yep.
that sort of detail what I'm talking about. Where's the bigger one? From other sci-fi. So obviously, everybody should be familiar with what a pelican, the pelican looks like. Um, oh, where'd he go? What the pelican looks like from Halo, and this is just a fan art. If you've seen the pelican in game, it can you can use condors and pelicans to carry vehicles and stuff. But you can see how the fan art removes the troop compartment, from the one on the bottom in order to make room for whatever attachment mechanism you would use to drop a Scorpion tank or a Warthog. Um, but the Star Wars version of this is from the Clone Wars. Um, the It's a low altitude. Let's see, low altitude assault transport, and there's variants of it. There's the I forget what they're called. One is I, and I think the other one is C. I think the I one is for infantry, and C is for carrier for vehicle. I think it was. Um, but you can see how it's got you know a mechanism for latching on to the vehicle, and that's probably some sort of magnetically operated. Might be a little bit dubious if the magnets lose power, but something to latch onto the vehicle, um, and be able to the this Valkyrie variant lands, following hot on the heels of I'm doing the Chris Roberts talking method. I'm talking like Chris Roberts. But Valkyrie comes in and lands, and it's disgorging infantry out the sides and the back, and maybe like an Ursa Rover or some other cyclones or something like that, and then in comes behind it this Valkyrie variant and drops off a Nova, drops off a Ballista, whatever else we end up getting.
Yeah, can you imagine a bigger tank?
A tank bigger than the Ballista or
No, a
the
tank
Nova?
bigger than the Nova.
Oh, gosh, I
Like,
don't think so. That's
so
huge.
the Ballista or the Nova is a great tank, like, but it's an assault tank.
It's
It
grande.
it is the basic of basic tanks. It is not a siege tank.
Oh, are you talking about using something like a mobile, um, oh crap, like a self-propelled gun, like a
No, just talking. So, have you ever seen the StarCraft siege tank?
yeah, well a siege tank though uses when it's mobile it's a tank. When it's not mobile, it's a um, it's an indirect fire weapon. It's like the paladin that the army uses. I forget what
AA
the designation is.
tank, P9. We have several. I think the Nova also has some AA capabilities, but we have every rover has an AA variant.
Ooh, let's see. It's
So we
these
don't really need a tank for AA.
or no, it's a Atlas.
But yeah, I think that it'd be really cool if we had a bigger tank that was just took up more space, not taller but wider. I think it'd be just really cool. But yeah, I'm really liking the idea of this extra variant of the Valkyrie. That it makes a lot of sense too. A vehicle
Oh,
transport, a bigger
dang
vehicle
it.
transport Valkyrie. What's up?
I'm looking for it. So I should have saved it. I'm stupid. Um, so P9 TV says AA tank when. Um, and so I saw this and it's a fan art thing, and I'm trying to find it right now. But someone did a fan art variant that was really well done of the Atlas, and it becomes the Atlas front end with like a trailer attachment on the back that has a great big gun on it, and the way it was written up, if I remember it correctly, could be used for both indirect fire, like artillery, but also as a large AA cannon. And I think it was a size 5 or a size 6 cannon on this thing. It was super cool looking. Let's see, Blizzrad in chat. But yeah, I think that eventually there are going to be people who play SC just for FPS combat, and when Pyro comes out, those people will have a hard time getting to where they need to go. We will need things like a military version of the Starlifter and a military light carrier,
We
maybe even
have a
more
military Starlifter. We don't need
well,
another one.
we have the Starlifter, we have the Liberator. We're pretty good for vehicle transport.
Ground vehicle
What
transport.
we don't yeah, for ground vehicle transport, what we don't have is a way to transport troops and deploy troops, uh, far forward. If you are, if your org is a PMC and you're wanting to take it to the Vanduul
Yeah.
in one of the Vanduul systems or something like that as part of maybe a contract from the UEE or something like, whatever, you're not going to be able to, sorry,
Mm.
apologize. You're not going to be able to load everybody up from like 3 or 4 systems away in this safe base of operations, and then fly all the way to Virgil or Orion or Tiber or something like that, and then hit the Vanduul there. Um, you're not going to you're going to want to be operating from a mobile base as you go around and do these missions for the UEE or do contracts for other orgs, because if you're operating from a fixed base and from using Starfarers, loading and unloading at a fixed position and stuff, you're really limited, and that's why we do this way in the Marines now. And for the UEE military, they would, this is how they would do it. They would have Marines forward deployed on these ships, and they would use them to land their initial invasion force, and then you would have Starlifters and Liberators bringing in army vehicles to follow. other larger troop transports and everything that are more dedicated troop transports
Mm-hmm.
versus a landing ship
Yeah,
or a ship that supports landings,
the
that sort
biggest
of thing.
the biggest difference between the Valkyrie and the Starlifter is the Starlifter lands into an already secured area. Yes, it has
Hmm.
turrets to make sure it's secure, but it is not something you should be bringing into a front line. And
Yeah.
you can tell by the commercials they used in each of the ships. The
See, and that
this
was funny to me because some people took those commercials and like, look, a missile just flew by, and you can hear explosions in the distance, and I'm like, that's not the front line, there, kids.
that's artillery.
Yeah,
That's doing its
that is.
job. Yes,
They
the
are
Starlifter can
landing.
take a hit, but not two.
Yeah, they're
Um,
they're landing at a staging point, rear from the front lines,
mhm.
exactly as you would as hope and
And the
plan.
Valkyrie lands on the front lines. It
Yeah.
is much like the Prowler. They're basically brothers from different civilizations. They are
Hmm.
land, get troops out, get out, bring
Yeah.
in the next round. And the Liberator, much like you said, like the Hercules, is also back in the staging area.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, it does much the same thing, except for it can bring a little bit, escort or like combat air patrol.
mhm. And
Um,
then Blizzard said, I meant the Starliner, as in the personnel transport. Back when that was actually originally worked on, they were
mhm.
working on a military variant.
Yep.
It had not only a good amount of troop transport capability, also a vehicle bay. It also had a theater to have conferences in for your entire platoon. So that is
Yeah.
definitely has been on the docket. So that will actually be pretty cool. But I
The
like the
UE
idea.
Army could have Starlifters with rows of seats, and that just for flying, you know, a battalion of troops or a company of troops to the front to deploy them.
Hmm.
You just wouldn't, that trip, you know, going from a secure UEE base to the Vandal, the actual Vandal front or an actual Vandal battlefield, you know. If Star Citizen was real and we didn't have this sort of time compression for travel and everything like that, that trip would take days, if not weeks. But for players, even for players, that will most likely take hours to go from your secured base in a UE system, to your target several systems away. And so that's why that being able to deploy from a mobile base, which is what these, you know, um, what an LPD or an LHD with the U.S. Navy, and I forget what the equivalent would be with other contemporary navies would be. But everybody's like, oh, you don't need those sorts of things. Those things aren't common. And it's like, no, they're like the second most common type of ship behind like well, maybe third behind a destroyer and an attack submarine. The U.S. Navy literally has a couple dozen of these things,
Wow.
of these carriers for Marines and our
You
toys.
know, I would actually make an argument for an RSI version of the Valkyrie dropship you're talking about. Because
I don't
remember,
care who makes it. I
so
just think
RSI
it would be
is,
easy for them to make a Valkyrie variant because
yeah,
it would require less
definitely.
modification.
Like they already
The
have it.
lore. Yeah, the lore would make sense because of how the lore for how the Valkyrie got developed.
Hmm.
But as long as someone makes it,
But
I'll be
remember
happy.
that RSI is supposed to be the old money. Like the people who were here first. They own the uh flagship carrier, the Pegasus, and the battle carrier or the fleet carrier, the Bengal. Those are both RSI ships. Yes, Anvil is the new kind of, they're getting all the military contracts now, but RSI was there even before Aegis was there. So if they're deploying something like back in the Tavar, well, I don't know if Tavaran War, that the timeline might be a bit off for that, but originally to get the ships for the Empire, it was RSI. That's why
Hmm.
we have all these RSI battleships.
Yeah,
Like
I
even up when the F8 was coming in, and that's a relatively new ship for the lore. Um, RSI was there again, saying, "Hey, we have the Scorpius," and that was their uh vote or their pledge for a heavy fighter for the Navy. So not only way back then, but also now, they are still a military contract kind of place. So I think getting some smaller RSI military stuff in the game would also be a cool idea.
Yeah, I think RSI definitely needs to be more fleshed out. Um,
They have
I
what, 5
lean
things?
I lean more towards Anvil simply because ground combat and marine support is kind of their thing.
I wonder
with
if
the with the Liberator, the entire Atlas line, the Valkyrie, and the lore from the Liberator, talking about how they are the ones that make these large scale troop and vehicle transports. You know,
I wonder
that's the
if
way
the
I'm leaning.
yeah. I wonder if the leader of Anvil is former Marine.
I don't know.
That
I
would
just
make
think
way
that
too much sense.
the lore surrounding how the Valkyrie got developed, I think Anvil saw a niche that was ready to be exploited, and the Valkyrie was just one of the first steps. Because when they talk about the ability for the UE military to conduct a forced landing during the Tavaran War or Tavaran Wars, they were garbage. They forgot everything we have learned, in the 20th 21st century, 21st century is about doing this, and before, and they just did not have the
Well,
capability
how
to do it
many
whatsoever.
how many decades, centuries has it been between conflict and the Tavaran War?
Well, that's the thing, is that we didn't have because we went from the Tavaran War with this large scale conflict to these sort of brush fire conflicts with the Vandal that just they would just explode, is in intensity, and then we they would just hit us real hard, and take this system, and we'd retreat, and then they'd leave us alone for years and years, not leave us alone, but mostly raids and stuff.
Yeah.
And so Anvil recognized that, with their, you know, and some people say it's AI, who knows, but with the system that helped them develop, and find the need for the Valkyrie, the lore that talks about that system and the need for it, the uh, that's how, and this is how the UE Marines came to be. The Marines didn't exist before the Tavaran War. The Marines came to be after the Tavaran War because we had no ability to conduct an organized forced landing. It was a bunch of hodgepodge nonsense, and we got a lot of people killed and a lot of resources wasted. Um, and so that's why they developed the UE Marines. And I think the Valkyrie was a replacement for their first foray into an actual dropship, because hundreds of years later. Um, but I think it's we they I think the UEE, when they built, first developed the Marines, and because the Army and the Navy were jealous and angry about it for a long time, I think the UE Marines didn't get the resources they needed at first, and the dedicated assets they needed at first. And now, after centuries of them kicking ass and taking names, I think that they're probably getting the resources they need, and that's why they have, their own Bengal battle groups. They don't rely on the Navy. They have their own, um, they have their own, essentially, versions of what an LHD is, an America class or a San Antonio class LPD. They have these things in game of their own. They have their own dedicated drop ship that was built to serve their needs. The lore for it is really interesting, and it totally just makes my Marine brain real happy. If Paul ever watches this, he's just gonna make fun of me, but that's how my brain works.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, I can't. I would love to say more civilian ships, but I couldn't really say what more civilian ships we would need. Um, we are just about a half an hour of this, so we are 2 hours 17 minutes. But
Oh
yeah,
man,
I
we
yeah
saw the timer.
yeah. I think the idea of the Valkyrie dedicated vehicle transport is actually a really good, nice idea. Um,
Yeah, pair it with my dream ship, the Anvil assault ship, and that and the Valkyrie. You've got a really interesting combination that you can use for not just military purposes, though. You
I,
can land civilian vehicles. You can use this to
there's
um,
actually a really interesting lore concept coming up in the universe being made right now. Um, like, we have so many human factions that are boiling over. We have Xenothreat versus the Navy. We have the anti-UEE versus the UEE. We have transitionalist versus traditionalists. And with all these frays in society, one of them's going to break. So eventually, we'll have two different human factions.
Oh, there's going to be conflict. Ooh, it's going to be bad.
Right, but also ship manufacturers will have to choose, which means we're going to have two versions of every ship. Somebody who sells to one side, somebody who sells to, unless of course you do the whole, selling to both sides, but that will get you caught eventually. And then you'll be burned by both. So it's obviously a string they can play. But if, like, RSI has the Bengal, if somebody splits off from, like, if let's say the People's Republic or Xenothreat or whoever is anti-UEE splits off, let's just say Terra splits off from the UEE and makes this human Xi'an alliance. So they are the human Xi'an allies of the East. They're gonna need their own carrier, and they're gonna say, no, that's their carrier. We don't want any of their stuff. Our stuff is better.
Yep. And Paul has been talking about this potential conflict and division for years. Paul, Astropub Paul, and I'm a big subscriber to that train of thought, because I think he's spot on in his interpretation of the state of the UEE as it is right now, especially with the external and internal pressures.
Yep.
And it would be really interesting to see how the UEE got broken up, especially given how we know exactly where all these major ship manufacturers have their headquarters and where their operations are based out of.
Actually, Anvil, Anvil would have to make their own carrier because Anvil is Terra.
Yeah, Anvil is on Terra.
RSI is Earth. I hate it.
Earth. Yep. Aegis is a little bit more all over the place
because they're terrorists.
Multiple operations. Yeah, they're huge.
So that's another string they have to pull. Fiona Messer is still missing, and there are still Messer loyalists in the UEE. Not to mention, we have the entire Kurthak in that entire bombshell of a storyline they can pull there. There is just so many things to go wrong in this universe. It's great. And
before we shut down, we should probably mention, and we should just probably mention before, without deep diving into it, but civilian ships, because is it Bizrad or Blizzard? I don't know how to say it. But he was in the chat in Inforunners when we were talking about this earlier. We talked about a large miner. We talked about because the Expanse is supposed to be paired with a prospector. What's going to be the refiner paired with the mole? We have, the mole is sort of like the medium mining ship, and we might get a medium refining ship. But does that mean we're going to get a large mining ship and a large refining ship?
No,
before you get up to
large mining ship is the refining ship, being the Orion.
The Orion is capital, though. And
okay, you're saying the before that, okay, above, medium, below,
something in between.
Okay.
Yeah,
I can get behind this.
If I forget how big the mole is, but it's a huge size gap. And if the mole refinery is sort of equivalent in size, it would be a huge size gap going up to your capital, almost super capital, I guess, class Orion. So why not something in between? Same thing with repair ships. If the Crucible is redesigned to meet the concept that was promised,
there you go.
It would have to get huge, but then maybe we'll get a repair ship that's in between that and the Vulcan to sort of fill up or backfill that space. Yeah, look at that cute little guy.
Yeah.
Aww.
So the mole is 45 meters and the Orion is 340. So what is?
I thought the mole is a little bigger, but I guess not.
Yeah, no, it's tiny. And I have some problems with the mole being the medium or whatever. I don't know. Mining's not my thing, so I can't really comment to it. I'll stay out of the argument. So what is a pair that you know has a small, medium, large, other than the whole series? What kind of has that scale?
Well, and that's the thing is we have
We don't really have a scale to compare it to.
we have several things that are small, medium, capital. We had that for medical.
Yeah.
Mining, apparently we have
Actually,
small,
we
medium,
might
capital.
have if we were to pull up the tally. Where's the tally? Tally.
Repair,
Retaliator.
we have small, medium, large-ish. We don't know
So
which way the
the
crucible is going to
Retaliator's
go.
a torpedo boat, right?
Hmm.
And the Polaris is a torpedo boat, is it
I
not?
guess you could say, yeah, the Tally, Polaris, and Gladiator.
So that would be small, medium, and large.
Yeah, I guess the Polaris would be like a little bit for big for the large size,
Mm-hmm.
but if
Not
you're
too much.
including, but because the Javelin has torpedoes, you could say
Yeah.
the Javelin is the capital, and so you could have a miner that is 100 and some odd meters, low
And
hundreds.
and Blizzard said 300, 400, 600, 890. That is another good one. So between
Yeah, for luxury. Yep.
yeah, absolutely. That's another good spectrum. So let's go 890 and
There's a
uh
lot of yeah. P9 TV just said we will get the same professions filled with alien ships, and I completely agree. I think we're probably going to get those all the get the professions more filled out with human ships, but I think they're going to get the ball rolling for alien ships as CIG grows.
yeah,
We're talking
I've
about that
al-
massive growth
I've
for
always been
Manchus.
talking about how there's so much more content than they have people for right now.
Hmm.
Because you're right, they do need a hauler, a touring ship, a bomber, a military transport, all these different ships for every single civilization. Not only the Vanduul, which they already have, but the Tavaran need all their ships backstopped, so we know what they looked like back then.
I could
Um,
see them not fleshing out the Tavaran and Xi'an as much with like as many manufacturers, but still
so
having
interestingly
you know,
enough, the Xi'an have a different way of doing their business altogether. For a
yeah, I
ship
know what you're talking
manufacturer to
about.
exist, it has to be ordained by the government. The
For
Rylan,
the equivalent for us would be like a certificate of need.
so the Rylan is they are transport. The Gatak Rylan, right? Is it right? Yeah, Gatak is the company. Gatak is the company that does material transport ships. That is their company in the government. They are the only ones who make those ships. The Xi'an Scout by Apoa. Apoa is the fighter of the Xi'an. Nobody else in the Xi'an Empire makes fighters. And so that's how that works. So it's super interesting how they do it. And so the Gatak is awfully empty. I mean, it's one ship. It is what is the it's the medium transport. They have different philosophies on how to build ships, and I love that actually comes out in the design.
Well, and there is the rumored Gatak. I think it's the capital cargo that
Ooh.
we had. That if you let's see,
Yeah, the
Xi'an
the the
capital
really
cargo.
old cargo ship that was in concept art. Yeah.
Yeah, the leaks. If you Google Xi'an capital cargo, it's one of the first things that comes up in images. Um,
Also
so
has
there's a concept image,
the
and then
front
there's
ductile.
a um, it looks like almost like a early white box.
Oh yeah, it was horribly bulky, and I think you're thinking of the image with the whole C through it, or
That's actually a whole E.
whole E through it. Ugh. So that is the ship that later became the Gatak Rylan. So I forget where they mentioned it, but that it's not like the exact same ship, but it is the idea train that eventually flowed into us getting the weirdly straight up and down, but also normal floor setup
See,
of
I
the.
think that ship is in a squadron.
Oh, you think it's gonna? Ooh, okay, okay. I'll be here for that. I can be here for that.
Let's see.
Anyway, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, refinery. So yeah, other than like a couple of different things, I definitely think absolutely we should get them. The problem with refining and a mining large ship is basically mapping right now because we don't have enough minerals to make that make sense. Like the Aeron Halo would be the place you would need to deploy that, but we don't have a need for it yet. There'd have to be a mechanic made. So yes, I can see a near term having more mining abilities or more mining territory, especially in Pyro, and needing a large, not capital, mining ship and refining ship. I like it. I like it a lot. Civilian things be made. We also need small builders. I know it's not a near-term thing, but small building ships.
Yeah, the Pioneer is way out there, but I think there's going to be other ships, vehicles that are related to that profession.
Yeah,
I
think
guess
of a.
I dropped a screenshot in Discord in our
Okay.
Discord.
So think of like a what's it called? The Expanse is a Expanse size ship that is a local what's it called? Factory. Basically, you go to a place, you are the factory, much like the Pioneer is, but the Pioneer is also a prefab factory.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine like a compact factory. It doesn't have as many things it can do, but can still get you an outpost that you need, or at least
I
the
think the
pieces to put it
Pioneer
together.
will end up being kind of like how the Orion does mining and refining. I think the Pioneer will be able to manufacture um, structural things, but also um, put them together as far as putting the component pieces of a structure together to make a structure. Whereas other buildings or other building ships or building vehicles might not be able to do the 3D printing part.
Mm-hmm.
They might have to take pre-made pieces from the Pioneer or from somewhere else and put them together.
I would love a Jupiter 2 Blizzard. Like I would. Oh, from the newer ones, from the newer Lost in Space, I would love a Jupiter 2.
I
That
really enjoy
is
that TV show. Yeah,
that the design of the Jupiter 2 from the newest series is one of the best concepts I've seen. And it
it
is so
it
good.
looks so Crusader.
Yes, it does look very Crusader. Yeah. It also looks slightly Anvil because Anvil loves the disky things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it
So
does have some influence for
it
sure.
could go either way. They could force it into whichever bucket they'd like.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would love that. And then you sent me a picture on Xi'an Cargo, which is a it doesn't say ship though. And
It's a very vague thing,
yeah,
though.
it just says Xi'an Cargo. That's all
It
it
says
says.
construction and implementation of interior
Interior,
and
yeah.
exterior approved concepts.
Is that
And
a
I think that
building?
is
Is that the boxes? Is that a ship?
well,
We
so that thing that
Mhm.
the it was just when it was leaked, it was just called Xi'an Cargo. Xi'an cargo
Okay.
ship.
Okay.
That ginormous cargo thing. Do I think that it's going to be a player purchasable thing? Absolutely not. No. But do I think that we will see them flying around in game? Maybe it'll be a player controllable thing. Who knows? It's not a priority for CIG, but I think it's gonna happen eventually. And with the growth in Manchester, with all of CIG essentially adding, you know, I think an additional 700 people over the next 4 or 5 years is their goal.
Mhm.
600 or 700 people. That's a lot of room for a lot more ship devs. They can build a lot more ships.
Yeah.
They're already pretty have a pretty good ship
And
production
remember,
pipe.
it's not just Squadron 42 that's coming out in the next 2 years, hopefully sometime. There's
Yeah.
also 2 more episodes to go, and there's a lot of stuff that needs to be built for them. So that is going to be super interesting. We are
Mhm.
now past 2 hours and 30 minutes.
How long have we been doing? Have you been keeping track? How long have we been doing your scanner anomaly? Just out of curiosity.
Somewhere around 30, just over 30 minutes.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good
Yep.
because we got a lot of ideas, both civilian and
Yeah.
Or industry and combat
Industry,
related
combat,
or
and alien. So
civilian.
yeah,
Yeah,
covered our bases.
there's a lot of there's a lot of different ways that could go.
Yeah. So it was a bit of a weirder time with MISC Anomaly. That being it more of a discussion, kind of like let's see what we can think of.
Well, but it's something that is a constant point of conversation in the Discord in the circles that you and I run in. So it's
yes,
a
very much
discussion
so.
worth having for sure.
Yeah. So let's see. What all did we cover this episode? We covered. Let's go back to the show notes. We covered the identity crisis of the Starfarer, what it started life as, and all the changes that's happened through it, and what the heck is going on with quantum fuel specifically, and refiners. Now that we have a whole refining ship, we covered tractor beams, and we covered ships that we'd like to see in the in the shorter to nearish future. We also read over the roadmap update, and that's very short this week, but we'll have a hopefully much bigger one next episode. And next episode, we are going to be covering not only the roadmap update, but the monthly report, and also, as always, Spectrum, Pulse, and 2 more scanner anomalies for you. For those listening on podcast places, the show notes will be in the description, and you can go and read through those. There's also going to be links for other places to view this, so if you want any of the visuals, you can go there. There's also going to be Discord links and things, so you guys can also join in the discussion. We love hearing about Star Citizen people, even if you're not a Star Citizen player or you don't like or play Star Citizen. We love just talking about games. So obviously, we love talking about it. So just drop us a line wherever you may be. And then as for the people who's watching this on YouTube, wherever, we will be for this week. We will be releasing the whole podcast and then the sections of the podcast. So if you don't want to watch an entire almost 3-hour show, we'll be breaking this up into smaller bits. And then next week, we're going to try the reverse, see which one works better. I think that's all the housekeeping for this episode. You got anything else, Tree?
No, we've had a number of people watching live and participating in chat, and I just want to say thank you for joining us, and we appreciate you guys joining in on the conversation and your feedback, and glad to have you guys here. Hope to see you on the next one. We will keep our fingers crossed that we've got a juicy roadmap update to dive into.
They can only delay it for so long.
But we'll also have at least a monthly report. So
yep.
That should be really interesting as well.
And for those of you who don't know, it's not every week, but it's every other Monday. We go ahead and do these podcasts on Twitch. And then we release them within 1 or 2 days onto all of the other social medias, being on YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes, and Anchor, I believe, are the 4 places we post this. I think I'm not missing any, so it's my job. I should know where I'm posting it.
Anchor is the thing that puts it out to the other podcast services,
Isn't
right?
it on? Isn't it also a hosting site? I don't remember. It's been 2 weeks since I posted something.
Your job.
I know it's my job. I should know what I'm doing. Oh, it's because I'm using. What's this called? Oh, that's just the RRS feed or RSS feed. Never mind. So yes, we also have the RSS feed. Everything will be posted in each other's links in all the videos and podcast things, so you'll be able to find your way around to all the other places we use this. Okay, that's it. Let's go. That's it.
Cool.
I'm done. Have a good one, everyone.
Night.
And
we'll see you.
Yeah. Hopefully see you in 2 weeks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.